Yes, literally nobody would argue that End-of-Series Sung Jin Woo clears the entire Jujutsu Kaisen verse with zero difficulty. It's not even close. But what about level 100 Sung Jin Woo? This is what he'll be at the end of the second season. He'll be at level 100 and he'll have Beru the Ant King as his strongest shadow soldier. At this point, I'd say he's on par with national level hunters. What do you think? Can this version of Sung Jin Woo solo the Jujutsu Kaisen verse, and would it even be close? The answer is yes, but it's a bit tricky because he isn't immortal at this point in the story. In fact, if we assume that national level hunters are around the same level as Gojo or Sukuna, then it wouldn't even be wrong to say that our boy himself is about Gojo's level. And if he's on Gojo's level, how does it make sense for him to solo the entire Jujutsu Kaisen verse? It's because his overall abilities are simply better. Even at the end of the first season, his physical strength must have already been beyond Toji's heavenly restricted body, and with abilities like Ruler's Authority, we can reasonably assume he could eliminate 99% of all curses with just a single touch. Of course, he wouldn't be able to turn the curses into shadow soldiers since curses don't physically exist, but they won't be a problem either. I'd say the only curse who might actually pose a problem would be Mahito. Mahito's domain expansion, self-embodiment of perfection, is definitely an issue. If Sung Jin Woo touches him, he could potentially fall victim to idol transfiguration, because unlike when he becomes the Shadow Monarch, he's still human with a human body at level 100. Of course, there's still the idea that idol transfiguration won't affect him at all, but even if it does, why would he even let a creepy guy like Mahito touch him? Here's the thing, Sung Jin Woo is perceptive, intelligent, and adaptive. If he were in the JJK verse, he'd most definitely learn how cursed energy works and understand the necessity of staying cautious, especially since you never truly know what an opponent is capable of. This is exactly why when going up against special grade curses like Mahito, he could simply send his shadow soldiers instead. And because they're shadow entities without traditional physical bodies, they'd be immune to idol transfiguration anyway. But I know what you're thinking. How exactly can he exercise curses without cursed energy? After all, he's an outsider, right? Well, the answer is actually pretty simple. Jin Woo might not be a sorcerer, but he doesn't need cursed energy because his powers come from a superior source, which is the Shadow Monarch, aka King of the Dead. He may very well be able to directly affect supernatural entities without any need for cursed energy. This is also where Ruler's Authority enters the chat. And guys, let me just quickly explain this ability, because I don't even think most solo leveling fans truly understand how it works. You see, Ruler's Authority works like telekinesis, but it's essentially invisible mana control. Our boy can use this invisible mana control to directly affect supernatural entities like curses. In fact, if he imbues his mana into curses and makes them explode, it'll be similar to reverse curse technique in the sense that curses will be deleted by a superior flow of energy. So yes, even in a one-on-one fight with Sung Jin Woo, all he needs to do is use Ruler's Authority and he'd be able to exorcise Mahito. And if he can exorcise someone like Mahito, a special grade born from humanity's fear of humans, then you bet he can exorcise 100% of all cursed spirits that were ever born or will ever be born in Jujutsu history. Of course, he wouldn't be able to turn them into shadow soldiers, but if he can exorcise all curses, that leaves us with just the sorcerers, and the main problems among them are Sukuna and Gojo. Sukuna is the king of curses and the strongest sorcerer in history, while Gojo's birth alone was enough to completely disrupt the balance of power in the Jujutsu universe. Naturally, we've already established that special grades like Gojo and Sukuna are on the same level as national level hunters. And because Sung Jin Woo himself is also at that level, this means he'd have two characters equal to him to deal with. There are also sorcerers like Yuta, Kenjaku, Yuki, Yorozu, Kashimo, and dozens of other sorcerers throughout JJK history who are just a few tiers below Gojo and Sukuna. And if I'm being honest, Jin Woo is gonna have a heck of a lot of problems with many of these sorcerers. And I haven't even mentioned Mahoraga yet. But still, the most dangerous ones are Sukuna and Gojo. Sukuna has his malevolent shrine, but you're gonna be surprised at how easy it would be for Jin Woo to counter it. Let's say he's standing right in front of Sukuna, and Sukuna unleashes his malevolent shrine at maximum potency. For the sake of argument, let's even assume that he gets actively hurt by those slashes. Guys, even then, it wouldn't be a problem. Not even close. All he has to do is shadow exchange with Igris and let Igris handle Sukuna. This would be so easy, it's laughable. The moment he starts getting slashed by Malevolent Shrine, he'll simply switch places with Igris, and because Igris is a shadow soldier, he'll easily withstand the domain and kill Sukuna. After that, he can turn Sukuna into a shadow, and just like that, he'll have the strongest sorcerer in history as a shadow soldier. Now, moving on to Gojo, we gotta talk about how Sung Jin Woo would handle Infinity. I mean, Infinity prevents physical attacks from reaching Gojo by creating infinite space between himself and his opponent. This makes Gojo practically invulnerable, especially when it comes to physical attacks. But Jinwoo has Ruler's Authority, which as we've established, works by manipulating mana itself. Gojo's Infinity is designed to block physical matter and direct attacks, not an intangible force like mana manipulation, which exists across multiple dimensions simultaneously. That means it's very possible that Ruler's Authority will completely bypass Infinity. Jinwoo wouldn't even need to physically touch Gojo. He could simply use Ruler's Authority to crush him, restrain him, or destroy him from a distance. Anyways, let's say Gojo uses Unlimited Void to fry his brain. This wouldn't work because he has the Blessing of Longevity, a passive skill that instantly cures all status effects applied to him. Considering that Gojo's domain expansion, Unlimited Void, overwhelms opponents by flooding their brains with endless information, it can be classified as a status effect, a form of mental paralysis or sensory overload. Jinwoo's Blessing of Longevity would immediately counteract and nullify the effects of Unlimited Void, rendering it completely useless. This argument is actually supported by the power scaling community, where power scalers have established that Unlimited Void sensory overload could be considered an abnormal status effect, which Sung Jin Woo is immune to. Plus, of course, he could do the same thing he did with Sukuna. Simply shadow exchange with any shadow soldier he has outside the domain's range and instantly evade Unlimited Void. Not only that, but he can also immediately launch a counterattack from outside Gojo's domain and destroy Unlimited Void just like Sukuna did in his fight against Gojo. Now, if Ruler's Authority doesn't work, Gojo's Infinity would supposedly lead to a stalemate, but he wouldn't be able to maintain Infinity forever, especially when all his students are being fodderized by Sung Jin Woo and his Shadow Army. Not to mention the damage caused by the Shadow version of Sukuna. In the end, Jinwoo may still only be the Shadow Monarch's vessel at level 100, but that also means the source of his power exists outside this world. Because of this, he could bypass Gojo's Infinity in the same way Sukuna did. That's right, by cutting space itself. So yes, let's assume Gojo can also be easily taken care of, which takes us to Mahoraga. To be fair, Sung Jin Woo may have more trouble with Mahoraga than Sukuna or Gojo, because in theory, Mahoraga's ability to adapt makes him the worst kind of opponent in JJK. Mahoraga can continuously adapt to any attack, so unless Jin Woo one-shots him, Mahoraga would keep adapting to the point where he could no longer defeat him. But considering Jin Woo's stats at level 100 and the fact that Mahoraga was killed by a football field level Malevolent Shrine and a bit of flame, it's safe to say that Ruler's Authority would definitely KO Mahoraga. And once Mahoraga becomes a Shadow Soldier, it's genuinely game over for the entire JJK verse. Mahoraga with Shadow Enhanced Strength, Infinite Stamina, and Regeneration? Come on, that's the kind of opponent who could even take on Goku. Hypothetically, let's also consider what End-of-Series Sung Jin Woo versus the JJK verse would be like. Guys, the battle ends as soon as it begins. Jinwoo would just activate Monarch's Vision, which is leagues beyond the Six Eyes, and instantly pinpoint all the major threats. Then he'd casually have his Shadow Soldiers one-shot him, turn him into even more Shadow Soldiers, then completely take over the entire Jujutsu Kaisen verse in just a couple of minutes. This series would be over. Ever wonder what Sung Jin Woo versus the One Piece verse would look like? Let me tell ya, it isn't even close. You can watch that video here.